Hello everyone. The release date for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been set for February 2024. Since FF7 Remake was released in 2020, 3 years from now, a certain theory has been whispered among fans in Japan. The hypothesis is, wouldn't this be a story where Aerith doesn't die? In this video, I would like to share my answer to this hypothesis. Furthermore, this story also looks back on the FF series, and I think it will be enjoyable for both those who believe in this theory and those who don't. So please enjoy till the end. Let's take a look at Aerith first. Aerith Gainsborough, 22 years old, 5.3 feet tall, born on February 7th. Blood type is O. She's from Icicle Lodge. White mage type, who fights using a rod as a weapon. She is the last descendant of the Ancient, and has been targeted by Shinra Inc. since she was a child. Aerith's name comes from the word, earth, and she can talk to the stars and manipulate their power. 22 years ago from the story of FF7, Aerith is born. Her father is Dr. Gast, a scientist at Shinra Inc., and her mother is Ifuruna, the last purebred ancient. But when Aerith was 8 months old, Dr. Gast was killed by Dr. Hojo, and Aerith was taken to the Shinra building with Ifuruna. When Aerith was 7 years old, she and Ifuruna attempted to escape from the Shinra building. But, at that time, Ifuruna dies in Sector 7 slums. Ifuruna entrusts Aerith to Elmira, who happened to be there, and Aerith is then raised by Elmira. When Aerith was 16 years old, she met Zack, who fell from the sky at a church in Sector 5 slums. The two became acquainted at that time and continued to meet occasionally. When Aerith was 17 years old, her whereabouts were discovered by Shinra and the former Avalanche, and she was chased by both parties, but was rescued by the Turks. But, although Aerith regains her daily life, she is treated as a target for surveillance by the Turks. When Aerith was 22 years old, she met Cloud at Sector 8 slums. Aerith's actions after this will follow the story of FF7. Ancient is a race different from humans that existed approximately 2,000 years ago. Ancient has mysterious abilities as a star pioneer, and his abilities are now explained in more detail in the story of FF7R. Humans and Ancients were traveling together as Cetra, but the journey was so harsh that humans decided to settle down and stop traveling. What was their harsh journey like? This may be addressed in future remakes. Ancient is almost completely annihilated by Genova, which came flying with a meteorite, but they managed to seal Genova away. And Aerith is the only surviving descendant of Ancient who inherited that power. Aerith is half Ancient and half human, so her mother Ifuruna is the last purebred Ancient. By the way, the name Ifuruna is a rearrangement of the letters Final, and means the last purebred Ancient. Although Aerith is not a pure-blooded Ancient, she is targeted by Shinra because she has enough ability to find the Promised Land. Ancient has a legend like this: "We are born in the stars, talk to the stars, and open the stars. Then return to Promised Land. Supreme happiness, the land given to us by the stars." Ancient has various abilities. One of them is the ability to interact with stars. Specifically, can talk to the spirits of the dead in the life stream. Ancient is said to have the ability to find Promised Land. Ancient can also sense the death of a person. Aerith also sensed the death of Elmira's husband and Zack. In the Temple of the Ancients, there was a depiction of Aerith bringing Sephiroth clone to Buddhahood. It can be said that it is an ability similar to sending from FF10. Ancient can generate materia from Lifestream. Materia that appears in FF7 is said to have been created by Ancient. Aerith from FF7R has the ability to show images to others. It is speculated that it is either the Lifestream's memories or Aerith's own memories. In the final scene of FF7R, when Aerith touches the Wall of Fate, created by Sephiroth, it transforms into a shining wall. By passing through it, his fate became a blank slate, but it is still unknown what kind of ability this has, and it may be depicted in the sequel. Her greatest ability is the ability to use the ultimate magic, Holy. Holy is the opposite magic to Meteor, where Meteor is the ultimate destructive magic and Holy is the ultimate defensive magic. By using white materia, Aerith can connect with the stars, and when she wishes for Holy, the stars will activate Holy. Aerith uses white materia on the altar in Forgotten Capital to try to activate Holy. Aerith's wish reaches the stars, and white materia begins to glow green. Originally, Holy would be activated at that point, but Sephiroth interferes with it. Cloud and his friends defeat Sephiroth and successfully activate Holy. But, since the activation was slow, Holy alone would not be able to stop Meteor. At that time, a life stream occurred and the planet was saved from danger. The story ends when Aerith is seen in the swirling life stream. What Aerith was doing in life stream at this time is written in the official book. When talking about Aerith, can't leave out Zack. He is Aerith's first love, whom she met when she was 16 years old. Aerith's encounter with Zack is similar in circumstances to when she met Cloud. In FF7, the relationship between Aerith and Zack is not depicted in detail, but in Crisis Core, where Zack is the main character, the close relationship between the two is depicted. There is a scene where Aerith hugs Zack from behind, and Aerith continues to write nearly 100 letters, depicting the love between the two. By the way, Kenichi Suzumura, the voice actor of Zack, and Maya Sakamoto, the voice actor of Aerith, are married. How will it be portrayed in the sequel to FF7R? In FF7, Aerith is killed in Forgotten Capital. There were many scenes in the FF series where characters died before this, but I don't think there was one as memorable as the scene where Aerith dies. However, Japanese fans are whispering a theory that Aerith may not die in the FF7R story. I will explain why such a hypothesis has become popular. To put it simply, the reason is that episodes and elements that did not appear in the original FF7 appeared. For example, the whispers that appear in this scene do not appear in the original FF7, and first appear in FF7R. I'll talk about whispers again a little later in this video. The most important scene that explains why there are whispers about the possibility of Aerith's survival is the last scene of FF7R. As you can see, a scene where Zack appears that was not in the original FF7 is suddenly drawn. And this scene is the most important. Aerith says this after stopping Cloud from following Sephiroth as he leaves. This is the fork in the road. Many users thought that the meaning of Aerith's line, "fork in the road," was, doesn't it refer to a branching into a story different from the original FF7 story? If a story is prepared that is different from the original FF7 story, there may be a story in which Aerith does not die. Also, there may be a story in which Zack, who suddenly appeared earlier, does not die. There were some Japanese fans who thought that way. In other words, there were fans who thought of things like this. Doesn't the story of FF7 have many world lines like this? Also, fans speculate that the stories of each world line are repeated in order, such as when A ends, B begins, and B ends, C begins, and so on, rather than existing at the same time did. Please take a look at the last scene of FF7R again. At this point, a scene suddenly appears in which Red 13 runs. This is the final scene from the ending of the original FF7. Immediately after seeing this footage, Red 13 says, "This is the landscape we are trying to throw away." If the landscape about to be thrown away means the ending of the original FF7, then it is a story that once existed. In other words, the hypothesis that the story of A ends and the story of B begins can be inferred from this scene. If hypothesized like that, then FF7R will be a story after story A. If this hypothesis is correct, FF7R may be a story in which Aerith and Zack survive. Let's take a look back at the stories of past FF series. The keyword is fate. If follow the FF series, we'll find that after a certain period, the fate element becomes stronger in the story. I think FF8 will be the turning point. This scene is part of the ending of FF8. Immediately after defeating the final boss, Ultimecia, Squall travels back in time to when he was a child. And Ultimecia, who was hurt during that era, appears chasing after him. Ultimecia cannot die without inheriting the witch's power, so she inherits it to Edea. Shortly after, Squall tells Edea that they have defeated Ultimecia. He also tells them that Edea will establish Balam Garden in the future to defeat Ultimecia, and that she will raise warriors named Seed there. Edea is confused at first, but then she realizes that what Squall said is her fate. In the future, she will establish Balam Garden and raise Squalls as seeds to become warriors to defeat Ultimecia. And in this era, Squall, a child, grows up as a seed in the future and defeats Ultimecia. Then Squall and Ultimecia travel back in time again. Ultimecia inherits the witch's power to Edea, and Squall tells Edea the story of her future. In this way, the battle between Squall and Ultimecia will be repeated forever. In other words, Squall cannot escape his fate of fighting Ultimecia, and Ultimecia cannot escape his fate of being destroyed by Squall. In other words, the story of FF8 is exactly the same as the FF7 loop theory that I explained earlier. Check out this scene from FF7R. In an episode not found in the original FF7, Barret gets stabbed by Sephiroth. However, Barret's wounds are healed by whispers. Red 13 saw this and said, "Is fate stronger than death?" By the way, Red 13 talks about whispers in another scene as a keeper of fate, a being who corrects any actions that bring about a result different from fate. This means that Barret is not destined to die here and is fixed by whispers. Actually, there is a scene similar to this in FF8. In this scene, Squall's body is pierced by Edea's blade of ice. However, when Squall wakes up, there is not a single scratch on his body. Judging by the previous scene, it seemed like he was mortally wounded, but he didn't have a single wound. I guess this is because Squall was not destined to die here, so he was revived by the power of fate. In this way, it can be inferred that the great power of fate is acting on FF7R and FF8. However, the original FF7 did not have a story that involved the power of fate in such a complex way. Why on earth did the remake version have such a complicated story involving the power of fate? This seems to be influenced by user ratings of the FF series. Contrary to FF7, which was well received, the next work, FF8, was not well received. As I explained earlier, FF8 has a very complex story. It's a very deep and wonderful story once understand it, but it was difficult to understand and didn't resonate with many users. I think Square probably applied what they learned from FF8 to the subsequent FF. FF9 has a return to basics theme, and is a simple fantasy story that many users can relate to. Although FF10 has a unique worldview, with its motif being the customs of Okinawa, Japan, the story itself is simple and easily resonates with many users. For this reason, in the FF series, many of the works after FF8 had simple stories. Of course, such stories have their merits, but it would also be sad to see Final Fantasy games with complex and deep stories disappear. However, there is one work that changed the direction of the FF series. That is FF13. FF13 was released as the first trilogy in the series. There are some similarities between FF8 and FF13. One of the commonalities between the two stories is that humans were created by God as tools. Both stories also have one thing in common: humans defy fate and fight against the god who created them. In both FF8 and FF13, the element of fate has great meaning in the story. Since FF14 is an online RPG, the FF that was mainly produced with a story will be 15 after 13. And fate has a great meaning in the story of FF15. The main character, Noctis, is destined to sacrifice his life in order to give hope to his people. This is the scene where Noctis is told his fate by Bahamut. Ardyn, the final boss of FF15, is also a character with an obligatory fate. After terrorizing the world, he is killed by Noctis and given a fate to give hope to the people. FF15 can be described as a sad story of Noctis and Ardyn, who are fate to fight. Both men are destined to die in battle, and they are not allowed to contest their fate. FF15 can be said to be the story in the FF series that is most at the mercy of fate. FF16, the new FF series, also shares the same story in which humans are created by a god and ultimately fight against that god. And fate has a very large meaning in the story of FF16. Looking back at the FF series, we tried to create a complex and profound story in FF8, but it was unpopular and we were forced to change course. However, after that, starting with FF13, FF15 and 16 made a comeback with a deep story. What these stories have in common is that fate has a great meaning. I think there are two reasons why the FF series has once again had a complex and profound story. One is the merger of Square and Enix. Square and Enix had previously been rivals in Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. However, due to a merger between two rival companies, FF and DQ are now made by the same company. I think that's why we were able to differentiate between DQ and RPG with a simple story, and FFA new RPG. I think another reason was that the staff wanted a complex and profound story like FF8. Strictly speaking, FF8 was influenced by profound stories such as Xenogears, so I think Square wanted to rebuild the RPGs created in this era. Also, this is FF13 too. FF13 2 is a story where players try to change their fate while traveling through various eras. This story is related to a time paradox, and is very complex. The central figures in the creation of the FF13 trilogy were Motomu Toriyama and Tetsuya Nomura. Also, Toriyama and Nomura are the directors of FF7 Remake trilogy. I don't think it would be surprising if the story these two create is a complex story that intersects things like fate, time paradox, and parallel world. This is a long introduction, but I would like to talk about whether there is a possibility of Aerith surviving in the FF7 Remake trilogy. It has been officially announced that the story of the second installment, FF7 Rebirth, will end with the Forgotten Capital event. In other words, in the original FF7, it's up to the scene where Aerith is killed by Sephiroth. My guess is that in the next game, FF7 Rebirth, Aerith will be killed, just like in the original FF7. The best reason to think so is because Square Enix has officially announced that the story will not deviate from the original FF7 story. However, that is just the story of the normal route. This is just my personal speculation, but I think the final work in the FF7 Remake trilogy has an alternate route ending. The reason I think so is in Square Enix's past works. That is Dragon Quest XI. A character named Veronica appears in DQ11, but she dies before the final boss battle. However, once defeat the final boss, we'll be able to go back in time and choose a route that will save her. In other words, like FF13-2, DQ11 is a story in which a time paradox occurs, and the lives saved as a result of it. However, as explained earlier, Square Enix has announced that the main plot will not be changed from the original FF7 story. Therefore, if there is a story in which Aerith survives, I think it will be a story with a prepared route different from the main route, like in DQ11. If formulate such a hypothesis, what should be concerned about is whispers. In this scene, Barret is killed, but is revived by whispers. It was fixed by whispers, the keeper of fate, because Barret was not fate to die here. Perhaps there is an event to defeat whispers, and by accomplishing that event, there may be a route for Aerith to survive. Of course, this is just speculation, and there is a possibility that things will not turn out that way. However, considering the trends of Square Enix's past works such as FF13-2 and DQ11, and the fact that the directors working on the FF7 Remake trilogy are Toriyama and Nomura, I don't think it's I'll tell you one of my guesses. In fact, the stories of FF7 and FF10 are connected, and the ancient story of FFV7 becomes FF10. Kazushige Najima, who was in charge of the FF10 scenario, said in an interview, "I think FF7 and FF10 are connected. FF7 and FF10 have one thing in common: the souls of the dead remain in this world. In FF10, there are many characters who remain in this world even after death, such as Auron and Seymour. In FF7, there is a formless thought-like existence called life stream. In the world of FF7, all life is sent to the life stream after death. In other words, FF7 and FF10 depict the souls of the dead very similarly. FF13-2 also has an ending where Tidus, who died in the previous game, comes back to life. By the way, there is a novel called FF10 2.5 that depicts the aftermath of FF10-2. According to this, can see that Tidus has not been brought back to life, but is being summoned by Yuna. FF10 has an energy similar to a life stream called Firefly. Firefly embodies the thoughts of the living, so it can project the images of the dead they wish to meet. For example, in this scene, Yuna thinks about her deceased parents, and their image is embodied. Considering this, Aerith in the remake version of FF7 does not have a story of survival, but there is a place in the world where a life stream gushes out, and her soul may be there. And if go there, might be able to touch her soul. In summary, I have two guesses. One is that in the story played normally, Aerith is killed by Sephiroth, just like in the original FF7, but there is a story with a different route, in which Aerith reaches the ending still alive. If this speculation is correct, I think there is a possibility that a story related to time paradox, or whispers, will be prepared. Another speculation is that Aerith does not survive, but that there is an additional place where she can connect with her soul. However, personally, I would be happy if there was a story with a different route in which Aerith survives. The content I talked about this time is just my speculation, but no matter what the content is, I think it's great that you can enjoy the new FF7. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching until the end.